Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Barry, I'm glad you're here.
Hi,
Stacey,
Sam.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
How's the headache?
Much better.
Super
It
duper.
it took the whole day. It didn't go away till like 8:30 last night.
Wow.
That was like
Kept
all
going to
day.
sleep.
Right?
It was the whole day. Your haircut looks nice, Barry. I like it.
Yeah, I was way overdue.
Hmm. Hey, Sam. All right. So, Barry, what happened that you guys had like a 3 GB video file yesterday?
Oh, well, Sam was on for like an hour and meantime Josh was just, you know, had his camera off. And then Josh and I talked for what was it, 2 hours or something? 2 an hour, 2.5 hours.
We started a little project of getting Barry's stuff seen on the internet.
Oh yeah.
Getting,
See, I'm
yeah.
invisible on the internet. Nobody ever heard of me. So Joshua thinks that there's ways that I can amp up my visibility.
Oh, Josh is the internet marketing guy, right?
Yeah. So we did a few things that maybe will increase the likelihood that people can find my stuff when they go looking for it, if they go looking for it.
Right.
But I don't know that there's much of an audience for what anybody on this call would want to watch for 3.5 hours or how long it was.
I think you just need a description. I think in a lot of the places on the internet, it's the description is molten or molten lava or
Volcanic.
volcano. Yeah, I don't think it really describes the wonderful work that you've done, Barry.
Well, I mean, that's just the title of the blog. And the other blog is called Gallimaufry, which also doesn't tell you anything. But because it,
But I'm
and that,
saying that the section that says description,
yeah.
there's no description on a lot of the places on the internet. That's my only point, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, I guess when I started the blog way back, what is it, almost 20 years ago or something, I didn't really know what I was going to be putting on it for the next 15 or 20 years. just random thoughts that come to mind, that seem like they're worth writing up. So they're very eclectic.
Yeah, well, we can go back and describe them all in great detail with our large language models. So whenever you're ready, we can do that again.
Yeah,
Hello,
maybe
Eric.
maybe someday ChatGPT can figure out what the overarching theme of my stuff is, because I don't know what it is. Overthrowing misconceptions, maybe. I don't know. Shabbat shalom.
But that is the job of these large language models. As long as you make your stuff findable by those models and understandable by those models. I mean, it's arguable now that humans are secondary, you know.
My stuff is not in the Common Crawl. I checked that. The Common Crawl never heard of me.
I know they
And
always
Wikipedia
bias
never
towards
heard of me
current.
either. Sorry?
They always bias towards more current content. What
Well,
in?
yeah, but they also include Wikipedia, and I was expressly kicked out of Wikipedia by none other than Jimmy Wales himself. So nothing I wrote on Wikipedia can be found because he basically buried it all, hid it all.
Are we still doing check-ins? Do we do these
We haven't done check-ins for
again?
weeks, months.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna do a check-in.
Okay.
I just came back from Hawaii around 1:30 in the morning. Got to sleep around 3. So went out there for about 3.5 days, and I was helping my parents make their transition so that they can now be in Taiwan permanently.
Oh, they're moving from Hawaii to Taiwan.
Yes. So,
But China's going to take over Taiwan, maybe.
well, every Taiwanese will fight in that cause.
Yeah, but your parents are
Myself,
too old to fight.
I would go there and fight. My dad would fight.
Well, he's 90, isn't he?
Yeah, he's 91. Both my parents are 91. But anyway, they identify very strongly with the island.
What's he gonna fight with? Weapons of math instruction?
Exactly. He's already done that. Yeah. Anyway, that was kind of cool because it turns out that there was a piano that my mom bought in 1992. It's a Steinway upright piano. And in 1992, it cost $12,000. I mean, not that money is a big deal, but Steinway pianos are pretty special. And if she wasn't able to find someone, within the family, she was just give it away. And I've always wanted to play chamber music up here in the Northwest. And I know a pianist who has a piano. Actually, she's a flute player, but she also plays piano and accordion. So she has a piano, but I have to go like 25 minutes. The island is, like 25 minutes one end to the other end. So I wanted to have a piano here so I could do some chamber music. So I'm shipping the piano, and God, I couldn't believe how much it shipped. But
more than it cost originally?
No.
No.
Actually, if you go onto the website now and look at that particular model, it's selling for like $35,000 now.
Oh, wow.
So I figured I'd get a piano and keep it in the family. And so she's happy that she was able to keep it in the family. But in the course of arranging all of that, I found out that the minimum move was 150 cubic feet. So she said, well, let's take this piece of, Taiwanese furniture that, she really likes because it's from Taiwan. It's special and it's unique. And here's this Japanese table that's very unique and one of a kind and it's beautiful. And so we were able to stuff more into the 150 cubic feet. So they're all happy about that. Plus, I got 4 boxes of my dad's, not his math books, but math books that cite his math books because he collects, math books from other authors that cite his work. And rather than, throwing all that out, now I have that collection as well. Anyway, it was kind of a fun trip. So that's my check-in. Now I'm back. So again, tomorrow morning around 3 or 4 in the morning, I have to head off to the airport again to go down to California. So I'm only here for like 26 hours before I have to go again. So I'm glad 2 of them are here so that I can rejoin this forum because I haven't been here very much lately. That's my check-in. Thank you for listening.
This morning I was listening to not chamber music, but symphonic music. Pieces of symphonic music that the first time I listened to it, which was probably 20 years ago, it knocked my socks off. And I've always sort of remembered it as very special because the main feature of the music is it has 3 interwoven motifs. And initially the motifs clash. And at the end, they come into harmony and concordance. And I'll tell you the name of it in a minute, but you might want to guess because it's a relatively well-known piece of music that has 3 clashing motifs initially that eventually come into, and it's a little less than 50 minutes long.
Because of the structure, it's likely not classical. It wouldn't be Baroque, although Baroque did have those, but very few of those pieces were standalone and that long. So it's got to be something in the post-Romantic era.
Yeah, I don't actually know the dates. I'd have to look up from the title or the composer to get the dates, but probably 19th century. Was just sort of off the top of my head guessing.
Mahler had a lot of those, but those were much, much longer.
Yeah.
Reich has a lot of those, but you wouldn't really call that symphonic. So I don't know.
So it's Russian by a Russian composer.
Good guess. So would it be Rimsky-Korsakov?
Bingo. Now, which piece is it?
Not the Russian festival?
Yep.
What?
The Russian Easter Festival.
I got it.
Yep. Yep. It's got three motifs representing spring. There's sort of the churchy, stentorian, solemn motif of Easter.
Yeah.
Then there's the birds singing in the spring, and then there's sort of a pagan dance motif. And you hear each of the three motifs independently, and then they sort of duel pairwise, and then eventually they all come into concordant harmony. And it's really a remarkable piece of music.
It's been years since I've heard that.
Yeah. And it came back to mind because a friend of mine is sort of going through a difficult period with members of her family, and there's a lot of disharmony and discord. And I was thinking two things. Number one, just play that piece of music, and maybe play it as a counter motif to the discord in the family, and see.
It's a metaphor for our last conversation last Sunday.
Well, that too, yeah, that too. And so that's why. I mean, I hadn't listened to it probably for more than a decade, but I went on to YouTube and I found one version of it that doesn't interrupt with musical commercials. There's one version that right in the middle of it they throw in a YouTube commercial with other music, but I found one piece that's continuous. Doesn't show the orchestra, but it's okay. And boy, you got to put it on at full volume. Yeah, coming out of these little speakers here of the iMac is not quite good enough. But
you got to come over here and hear my speakers, Barry.
Yeah, maybe what I need to do is hook up Sam Chan's big stereo set to another machine that's can put out the full volume and then rattle my neighbors. Whoa! But it's very danceable. You just want to get up and dance to it in portions of it.
Hence the festival nature of the piece.
I'm sure Eric knows this piece pretty well, being a musical guy.
Actually, no, I put it on my to-do list to listen to it. Yeah. Yeah, my brain's in the chat if anyone wants to look at it.
I saw that, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I don't expect people to read it. So the question is, when someone comes into a discussion, yeah, I have my brain in a certain place and you each have your own brains. So what are we trying to do by getting together and sharing our brains?
And in short, smooth out the discord, disharmony, and come into concordant harmony in some sense, which is why the Russian Easter Overture Festival is kind of a relevant piece of music, because it demonstrates that with three competing motifs.
Okay, so you need someone to arrange it and conduct it then.
Well, it's up on YouTube, so.
No, I'm talking about our conversation here.
Oh.
How do we arrange and conduct so we are in harmony?
That is beyond me. I can appreciate music, but I don't generate music. I don't compose it, perform it, generate it, but I can recollect music that has a certain emotional overtones to it or feelings to it.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
Anybody else interested in checking in? Because this is an easily riffable topic by at least three of us.
I'll wait a while. But go ahead.
Josh?
Yeah, Josh, did you go up on the roof yesterday, or you have to?
No, I waited. I'm waiting till today. I will be going on the roof today. I'm putting the Starlink so that I have better connection up on the roof. But I was just interested what you just said, Eric. Like, what are we trying to do here? And then we were talking about how Barry got I guess 86 from Wikipedia. Is that the proper term, Barry?
Well, I was personally sight banned by none other than Jimmy Wales himself.
Okay, so that was very hierarchical, the top of the food chain there, the person that created it.
Well, he was the co-founder, surviving co-founder, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking into the comment section on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. And in the comments, the way that a comment stays there as opposed to Wikipedia is when a person who has in the history of the platform disagreed continuously with another person, and when those two disagreed people agree on a comment, that's when the comment gets posted. And I thought that was very apropos. So maybe that's what we're trying to do here is not just disagree all the time, but find those places where we agree, and maybe we're getting to some sort of reality of what it could be. If we can disagree nicely and then all of a sudden agree on something, maybe we're getting somewhere. So that's just my representation, Eric, of what we might be doing here. I don't know.
And one question is whether you can therapize or heal a riff. A lot of times when there's a riff, it just becomes a disconnect and never gets reconnected and never gets resolved. And I think more often than not, an alienation doesn't get fixed, just gets persists and maybe even gets worse.
So you think that's a systemic problem with the way online communities were constructed, or the way they are now versus?
Well, they weren't that way back,
Yeah, they weren't.
1980s, early 90s. You'd see people disagree, but I never saw any schisms. Well, you really couldn't have a schism back then because there was nothing to separate it. Then with the commercial World Wide Web, schisms became much more easy to execute, to basically split off and make another version elsewhere on another side. Go ahead, Stacey.
I have a question. Back then, though, didn't the people talking to each other online actually know each other?
Well, they got to know each other. I think a lot of them, some of them
They
knew.
didn't? Okay, Sam's saying no. Okay.
Company, but mostly no. But there was such a small number of people that you got to know them because you're conversing with them every week, and you got to really appreciate them for their contributions and form community. I mean, a lot of it was forming communities where you really had shared experience, shared values, shared ideas, shared beliefs. And initially, almost everybody on the internet was from the high-tech culture anyway.
Well, because I think there's something in it about getting to know each other.
Absolutely.
Sam?
Eric just put a note in there about people who paid for online services. And what Barry and I are talking about is even before those paid services. There's something called UUNet or UCPNet that had a lot of these, forums way before AOL, way before CompuServe, way before whatever the other one was. Way before those little coasters on CDs. But that was true, grounds up, community building. There's a whole protocol about how you created new groups and, who could be a member. And, that was actually with the beginnings of the RFC or the continuation of the RFC culture, which I still think is brilliant collaborative practice.
It was very
to do that within my company.
It was very protocol oriented, very civil. I mean, people did disagree, but it didn't blow up into sort of internecine warfare like you would see in highly competitive systems. There wasn't really that much reason to compete. Nobody was trying to make money. You might be trying to get your ideas across, okay, and people did disagree on their ideas, but it was a knockdown drag out. But the funny thing was, the highest volume channel was NetFlame. It was a write-only channel. People would write their flames, their gripes to NetFlame, but essentially nobody read it. And so NetFlame was like dev null on Unix, just
So that's where Flame Wars, the term, came from.
Right. Net.flame was an actual channel. And if you really wanted to vent, you'd go to NetFlame, you'd vent, and then you got it off your chest. And if you're lucky, 2 or 3 people might have actually noticed that you wrote a flame.
So today, what forum would you, in your estimation, think is closest to what we had back then in the 80s. Because I thought that was really, really good. That was a much better culture than what we have typically today.
I don't know that there is anything comparable to.
I have a nominee for that.
Yeah, it's not certainly not Twitter. Not anymore. Maybe it might have been at one time.
Could have been, but it ain't anymore. No.
Maybe medium.com, but I don't know.
No, it takes too much effort to post on medium.com.
And what else is there? I mean, see, blogs, everybody has their own their own page.
Yeah, but nobody goes there. So there's no central place where everybody goes right now.
Yeah. I can't think of any place that would be comparable to net news.
I would nominate Reddit.
Oh, I'm hardly ever Reddit.
Yeah.
Reddit actually has a topic structure very similar to the way UUNet is structured. And it's pretty much everywhere. Every topic is addressed on Reddit, just about.
That's right.
They have a threaded discussion style. So if you see a comment, you can actually see follow-ups to that, and you can see follow-ups to that versus siblings to that. It has a very good threaded discussion structure.
Really spend any time on Reddit. I mean, it's not that I've never looked at Reddit, but I don't think I've ever posted on Reddit. You have to have an account on Reddit to post?
You do,
yes.
But it's free.
Yeah, but I don't think I'm pretty sure I have not registered on it.
Yeah, I think something to explore is the barriers to entry in various communities and like codes of conduct these days. And maybe I'm interested in something, but I'm not ready to expose myself with the community or, things like that.
Another one is a Quora. Quora is also pretty topic specific.
Which one?
Quora.
Quora, Quora.
Yeah, I've written on Quora, but I don't really spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, to me, that's more experts responding and trying to be experts as opposed to collaborative, exploration of things.
But there are multiple experts, so there are multiple. You can respond to, for example, one question came out, there are 10, 20 responses, and over time, and then you can respond to anything that you feel like you should be responding or whatever you feel like doing. I mean, it's pretty flexible. I like Quora because it has more, there's a lot of topic. They have different channels. So you have a channel, for example, you can create your own channel actually.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a community. It certainly doesn't feel like a unified community. It's very balkanized. The internet has become very balkanized.
Oh, I forgot. One of the main thing I love Quora is that if you post something, you better respond back when somebody asks you a question. If you don't respond back, they'll take you down because you're making up a fake story.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's important. Huh?
They have reputation management, and that
that's a structure that I think that's really important because people make things up and they cannot respond to what people say. They got tear down. Misinformation, done.
Yeah. The fifth horseman of the apocalypse: misinformation, disinformation.
See, on Reddit, that also kind of happens. If you post something, people can vote it up or down. Now, that is up, above and beyond what UUNet used to do. So it is a difference. But people who've been on there a long time have established reputations. I don't have a big established reputation. Some people have, reputation points in the tens of thousands. I've got slightly under 300. So I'm just barely there.
And most of my correspondents are also invisible.
But I invite you to check it out. Reddit, I think, feels more like UUNet than anything else I've come across since UUNet. Maybe
if I was 50 years old, I'd go back to Reddit, but I'm almost 80 years old now. I'm not sure if I want to.
You're still active. You still have opinions. You still have working fingers.
Well, I still write. I mean, Joshua will recall yesterday we went over to look at my blog. And the last post I wrote was it last May? I haven't written anything on my blog since last May. This is now November.
I didn't inspire you to write a blog last Sunday, Barry?
No. I mean, I thought about it. I didn't feel motivated.
Yet.
Then I haven't done enough.
Well, I mean, I have thought about the issue, but I haven't felt like there's anything to write about.
How do you know when you have something to write about?
And I wake up in the morning and it's ready to, it's coming out my fingertips. I basically, my emotions come out my fingertips. I discovered that back in the mid 1980s when I was in a really stressful situation. It was not only the breakup of the Bell Labs, it was also the breakup of my marriage. It was a lot of stuff happening. And I had a 286 computer and everything went out through my fingertips. I wrote a whole manuscript and it was automatic writing. It's not like I sat down, in advance to write something. I would sit down and it would just flow unbidden and almost without editing. I think I wrote a whole manuscript with essentially no editing.
Yeah. Some people believe that it's channeling. You're channeling your emotion, your thoughts into.
And that manuscript, I think 90% of it is still up on my website. I mean, I wrote it in what's it called? TROF. Back in those days, it was TROF. And so it was written using TROF macros, which meant it was really hard to put on the web because you had to find something that could realistically convert NROF or TROF into HTML, which sort of exists. It's not very good. So I did convert most of the chapters. And I put them up on a web server nobody even knows exists.
So Eric, to answer your question about what's the collaboration about, I can get a topic going, get a focus, get a goal set up. I promise you in about half an hour to maybe sometimes not even last 15 minutes, we get distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like we like talking on a meta level about collaboration, bringing all our experience together, which is great. Yeah, I mean, I'm still not sure like where Sam wants to take us in this
Okay.
group. Yeah.
Since I hear the question, mind if I respond?
Go for it.
Okay. I've heard a lot of criticism about the fact that many projects do not come out, or few projects come out of this particular forum. Okay. To me, that was never what this was about. What this is about is understanding how we scale collaboration, which means we have to understand the atomic units of collaboration. And to me, that's one-on-one. Okay. If you can't do one-on-one, it's stupid to talk about scaling it up. But we haven't even solved one-on-one collaboration. And the biggest issue to me are all the things that get mushed together as, oh, well, I can't work with that person. That's a very simple statement. There are aspects to people that make them easy to work with. There's aspects of yourself that make you easy or difficult to work with. And what I'm interested in is elucidating all of that. So that's why I coined this term collaborology, is to try and understand that. And one of the most interesting aspects of that is when people disagree, how do we do it? Do we do it in a way that actually tries to attempt to extract something useful out of it? Or do we just withdraw and emote and not engage? So I think those different behaviors will tell us, inform us, give us insight, and guide us how to try collaboration the next time. So I do note that, when we have good information exchange, each of us can go off and do something more useful with our lives than if we had previously not had that conversation. So the first actual impact in the world that I'm thinking about is how do we each take these conversations, learn something from them, and be a better person elsewhere outside this forum. That's number one. Okay. There's all this other stuff about collaborology that I'm collecting, but I don't expect anybody else to collect that. Now, from time to time, I do invite others to review with me these videos because there's probably about 800 of them now. Okay. And we haven't ever gone back to really study them. We've done that in bits and pieces. Okay. There've been some of those that we've done. But I've always been trying to say, okay, we need these on the record so we can go back and study them. But secondly, I also had tremendous confidence in the fact that eventually technology would evolve to the point where now technology could come and analyze these transcripts, records, videos, etc. And sure enough, we're like this close to that. This close, maybe even that close. Okay. And so that's why I think, these 800 or whatever videos have certain value. Now, if you go back and get a bot, to say, okay, where are all the times that, Sam, lost his temper? I'm talking about Sam Han, okay? Lost his temper in these videos, okay? You can study that. What led up to that? Who were the individuals involved? What was it in particular that triggered this particular individual? How is it that, this individual eventually came back around, to sanity? Or, did this person exhibit this pattern over and over and over and over and over and not learn anything? Or did they learn and it only happened once or twice? Okay, all of these things are susceptible to study. And all of these things are susceptible to building up this KB I call collaborology. But it was never about setting up projects. It was never about us forming a foundation or an LLC or a corporation, because in my mind, through many attempts to do that, it's really impossible. Because, with free form forum like this, you don't get the rules of engagement, the charter, the common values, the alignment, the practices. Too many people with autonomy, they just, don't take the time to do that. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was never the intent. Over.
Yeah, I just want to quickly mention all the stuff I posted at the beginning is very much related to what Sam said, because it's a personal thing where I'm emerging into something that I'm currently uncomfortable with. And I'm seeing things like from Barry's research that may be applicable to the situation I'm in right now. So leave it at that for now. Go ahead, Josh.
I know, Josh, your hand is up, but may I add one more statement to what I just said earlier, okay? And that is, there are two forums now that I more or less moderate, okay, and record. One is Saturday, and I keep that pretty free form. And I don't try to impose too much structure on Saturdays because it started that way. I'm not trying to impose it. Sundays, however, used to be something else. Then it changed. That, got dropped. And so I've taken the advantage on Sundays to focus it a bit more. And that focus is more about how do we practice all of these things I was just talking about, using more critical thinking, more leaning in, more model-based reasoning, more scientific method, more generosity in listening, all of those different aspects of it, so that we could really, really focus on it. And that's why I'm calling it co-sense making and deep grokking. Okay. I don't want it to be that shallow kind of, you said this, I said this, let's go back, to our regular lives. I want us to really lean in and really understand these differences. So I'm really looking forward to studying that video from last Sunday with the moments, between Barry and myself, and, really understand that. It just got posted like 2 or 3 days ago, and I haven't had the time to go back and review that. But I will. It's important enough to me that I will do that. So anyway, I just want to say that that's the difference between Saturdays and Sundays. And Sundays is really where I would try and extract and try and, ask more pointed questions to sort of bring the conversation to these elements that I just described. Over. Josh has his hand up.
Thank you very much, Sam. They just announced at OpenAI that they're allowing people to create their own GPT. So you use the GPT to create the GPT. So if we took what you just said and said, I want to create a GPT that is a Collaborology GPT, and everything you just said, and then allow everyone else here to put in what they would like to see, then feed it all of the transcripts. And I wanted to ask, do the transcripts put the individual person's name before what was spoken?
YouTube does not, but Otter does. And manually, you can edit those transcripts. By the way, on the plane back from Hawaii, I was taking notes because I actually heard Sam Altman interviewed on this very topic. It's very recent. And I was already thinking along those lines about how to set up a Collaborology KB, a Collaborology GPT. based on, by the way, GPT-4, which is now the free version. It's no longer 3.5 turbo. It's now GPT-4 turbo, which is now undermining ChatGPT. So it's essentially leveled up itself over.
Yeah. So in theory, we could create some sort of organization and have the GPT licensed through that organization. So you're able to go there and say, what does Sam Chan think about this subject? Was there ever that discussion? And if people got, no, there's nothing from the GPT saying that, we could put that in a queue to talk about in a next further call. So that's the loop that I would love to create here at GCC is we create it, we continue to create it, we feed it more of the conversations, and we discuss the things that are not being pulled up. And with that, I'm complete. And I'm glad you're on the same thought process. And I think what's great about democratizing that is anyone who's not a computer programmer can help create the GPT and influence it because you don't need to be a programmer. Go ahead, Sam.
About 9 or 10 years ago, I think it was somewhere around that time frame when I coined this word collaborology. The brash vision was to create a KB and an agent that you could actually go to and say, I'm about to start a little foundation. It's going to be about 3 people, and I'm going to focus it on this kind of Taiwanese culture. And, I'm just going to collect memories of this and books of that and papers on this. And then you could actually interact with it, and it would suggest, well, you probably want this structure, you probably want that protocol, you probably want this kind of a KB, etc. And somebody else could come and say, well, I want to do a entrepreneurial startup, and I want to actually scale with VC money, and I want to be able to, build this SaaS product. And then this KB could then advise you, well, then you want this different charter, and you want this kind of rules of engagement, and you want this much funding, and you want these kind of practices. That was really kind of like the brash vision. Now, GPT can probably do all of that now. And I'm just trying to see whether, the information that we've talked about, discussed, explored, etc., could inform that kind of an agent. So it's morphed through the ages. But originally, that was kind of the small vision that I probably never expressed before. Over.
Yeah. And I just want to also say, if we're referencing other materials, we can grab those materials and feed it to the GPT. So when Sam talked about he used the word grok, then it could reference stranger in a strange world, so on and so forth. Or if Barry is referencing his manuscript, it could actually say, can you tell me more about Barry's manuscript? So if we fed it Barry's manuscript, yeah. So that's what I would like to do, is let it be a vector space where we meet with the people here, but it can go out exponentially as more people come into the forum and reference more materials, as opposed to just a bunch of crap that it's hallucinating. And with that, I'm complete.
I just have to point out that even X.AI is being called grok. Somebody got to that reference. I mean, it's a very common reference, but at least now they're using that reference also.
Now, what Elon wants to call his GPT system associated with X, doesn't he call it Grok?
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
I think he coined it or proposed it.
He didn't coin that word.
Or, well, I mean, accepted that name or endorsed that name if he didn't come up with it.
Certainly endorsed it, but it came
well,
from
the question is, can grok?
Yes. The answer is yes, if you're Martian.
Yeah, I mean, I interpret grok as supporting deep model-based reasoning. And the reason I say that is because if you ask me to think about something, in order for me to think about something, I need a working system model, a mental model, a computer model, an analytical model, a mathematical. If I don't have a model, I don't have a way to think about anything.
Right. You'll notice if you ever go back and read the book, grokking, if I grok you, I'm also sharing water with you. So grok has many facets to it. It's sharing alignment, it's sharing understanding, it's sharing resonance, but it's also sharing water, which has a metaphorical value to it as well, because there's very little water on Mars.
Yeah. Oh, but in that sense, it's real water, not the because metaphorical water is actually a New Testament metaphor.
No. It's real physical water.
Okay.
Because it's a very dry planet.
There's a famous passage in the New Testament where the water of the well is used as a metaphor for the water of sort of insight, and it's probably one of the better recalled or classical uses of water as a metaphor. It's a woman at the well story, if you happen to be aware of it. Eric probably knows it.
Actually, Eric, have you read Stranger in a Strange Land?
I have the book somewhere, haven't read it yet.
Anybody else here read it? No? I recommend you do. I mean, you're probably going to get pissed off at the main character because he's very politically incorrect today. But a lot of ideas in there were pretty forward for their time. Yeah, Josh.
I just want to comment on what Eric just wrote. If AI can't explain its deductive reasoning process, how confident are you in its opinion? And do we know of AIs that can say, how did you come to that conclusion? And it can break down how it came to it?
Not the
Do you know of any, Eric?
Yeah, the problem is large language models are going one word at a time to construct a response, and it's a probability matrix based on its corpus that was fed. So I'm interested in what you're saying we could do now to create our own chat GPT using what? Like a corpus that we give it, or use prompt engineering to guide it?
I think just around the corner.
Ideally, go ahead.
I thought Eric was done, but go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, ideally, it's a corpus that we give it, but it's a corpus that we give it on, we tell it how to grok what we give it. Does that make sense? So we give structure around the large dump of information, meaning this conversation. We contextualize it with further conversation.
I'll tell you.
Why did Sam? Go ahead. I was saying, why did Sam want to create Collaborology? Who is Sam? What has he talked about before? What is his opinion on this piece of music that Barry brought up earlier? And why does he like this piece of music? And if he likes this piece of music because of this, why does he agree with Sam Chan on this subject? And give it some more contextual understanding in order to ask it a question. What would Sam think about a new platform that was created in the future for the internet? If you were Sam Han, how would you create that new platform? And it has to go back through all of the things that he said regarding any kind of formation of organizations and then write that out. So they're not just hallucinating, writing word after word. They're actually in vector space. If you give it more vectors to get to in interactions with other vectors, which are each one of the people here, it can deduct a possibility. Will it be accurate and right? Probably not, because it's not Sam, but it will try. And then Sam will have to correct it. And then hopefully that feedback loop will create the accuracy. Does that make sense?
I would say it could propose. I'm not sure I would use the word deduce or deduct. I would say propose, maybe.
I once asked ChatGPT,
yeah,
not so long ago, if it ever heard of Rene Girard's model of contagion. And it says, yes, I've heard of it. And then it mentioned the first two elements by name of the model. And then the last 3 or 4 elements, it just bollocksed. So it knew of it. It could name a portion of the model, but it couldn't recite the whole model correctly. And certainly couldn't use it since it didn't have it. Go ahead, Joshua.
I think just from my experience working with these language models is the computer is trying to make sense of contextual vector space, but it's the human that has to teach it to teach itself. So it's not teaching us, we're teaching it. That's something I just want to be clear about. Go ahead, Sam.
I'm so glad you say the word makes sense. This is where it comes in. I want you to chunk it down for me. How does computer make sense?
So that would be relational space and context is how a computer would make sense. And it's
So
not.
My point is that the way that the computer makes sense and the way that we make sense are totally two different worlds. The worlds apart.
Yeah. And I'm saying it's iterative in the sense that it needs feedback. Meaning, if it gives you something and you don't give it feedback, it's not going to know if what it gave you was any kind of logical reasoning, as opposed to it's trying to give you something that you agree with.
So
you have
because
to
of
say
that,
yes.
and because of that, the way that the computer do reasoning and the way that human beings do reasoning is, again, worlds apart. We cannot assume, we take it for granted that, you know, AI can do reasoning. No, AI does not do reasoning. Trust me.
Not today.
Hofstadter claims that the most powerful ordinary form of reasoning that humans use is reasoning by analogy. He claims that the brain is an analogy machine. As far as I can tell, ChatGPT does not reason by analogy. It reasons by recollecting narrative elements that it has seen. So it's essentially reciting somebody else's output, which may have come from analogy, but it's not doing original analogical reasoning as near as I can tell. But you can prompt it using constructivist educational methods or Socratic maieutic methods. You can get it to construct a model stepwise, and it will remember it within that silo. But of course, it throws it away when you're done with that conversation. It doesn't retain it and share it. Sam has his hand.
Okay, so to be devil's advocate, what do we do with analogy that an LLM is not doing?
We can reason from premise to conclusion in a familiar domain, provided we can say this domain has an analogy to that less familiar domain, that whatever happens in this domain, it's going to be echoed or reflected in this other domain. So I can use my knowledge of this domain to predict what's going to happen in that domain, because I can map the elements point by point from one domain to the other. So you have to know there's an analogy. You have to be able to use the model in the familiar domain to estimate what's going to happen in the less familiar domain. Finding and using analogies is a very powerful tool that humans use. I don't see LLMs doing that. Now, maybe Wolfram Alpha does that. I don't know. I've not spent enough time with Wolfram Alpha.
Let me give it a different version to explain this. Let me try to give a different version so that Stacey can understand this much easier. Think of like we have two robots. It's okay, just hanging there. There are two robots. One robot has 3 sensors, and the other robot has 10 sensors, including hunger, biological needs, survival needs, and all the needs, and all the different sensors. Now tell me which one can do a better reasoning than the others. The other can only read, remember, execute logic. This one here has survival sensor, have painless sensors, have visual, have smell, has all the, get threatened and survival, all the survival affecting these robots. Now try to do about, if you ask for the reasoning from this robot number 1 or robot number 2, and what kind of response you'll be getting. This is my way of thinking about it. Unless you have the sensors, you're incapable of processing that reasoning. You don't get into that domain. You won't be able to process the information. You won't get threatened by survival. So that's why I'm saying to you that AI have very limited, I'm talking about minute reasoning capability, because it has memory capability, it has logic execution capability, and whatever else they have in there. And human being, we got way more sensors. We have way more get threatened. We have way more, capability that AI have no way to simulate or stimulate, whatever you call that. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. Josh, I'm complete.
Yeah. Thank you. I just, what you asked, Sam, is how does the analogies of a human being differ from the analogies of a computer system, a large language model? And I think you have to look at the vector space itself. So if you look at the shape of the English language in vector space, and then how that relates to the shape of all the classifications of all the flowers that exist, the human brain has the ability to create arcs that have no structure. They can fire neurons here and neurons here and make absolutely no sense. Whereas the language model does not have the ability to make no sense. It must use the vector space to find and go through that pathway. And a human can say, thermonuclear war is exactly like cooking creme brulee, which a large language model would never say that. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But a human can make sense out of that because the way the neurons fire the pathways through it and reconstruct it in their mind, they've already fired the pathways. So they're not, like Eric was saying, it's going one word at a time. I've already fired. The minute I picked creme brulee to relate to thermonuclear war, now my brain has to go. I just did that. I jumped all the way to the other side of my brain to cooking and creme brulee. Now I have to think, what are the analogies and the similarities, and say the heating of the fire on top of the creme brulee is much like the way that a nuclear hydrogen bomb is destroying the molecules of the matter around it. So I'm creating that. That has no logic. It makes no sense. I'm just making that up. And that's why a human is different than a large language model, if that makes sense.
Remember the vector.
Because what I just said was nonsense. That's stupid. Creme brulee is nothing like thermonuclear war. Go ahead.
But also keep in mind that the vector that the large language model is using is created by human being, and they have to pick one way to represent it. They one out of the thousands that's capable, like you say, have no reasoning and no need to have any reasoning. There's no need to justify. It's not picked by one person. So that's like structure create behavior. The structure, there's only one vector. You're stuck with that one vector that someone give it to you.
Well, and also reinforcement learning. Some humans have reinforcement learning and some don't. Some were taught to just say things that make no sense, and they're allowed to do that.
So let's look at the summary and see what the summary says so far, what we talked about. And I don't know how to do that.
Oh, was it not already turned on before you clicked that?
Yeah, I thought I did.
No, it did get turned on at the beginning of the meeting. I might have clicked it away.
Oh, AI companion, catch me up.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are the action items? What do you click? You have three choices. Catch me up. Was my name mentioned? And what are the action items?
Yeah. Get the first one. Catch me up.
Okay, I just clicked on that. Can you see it? Or
all right. The meeting so far has involved discussions about online collaboration, the early days of the internet, and various platforms like Reddit and Quora. The participants have talked about the importance of understanding and collaboration on a one-on-one level before scaling it up, and the need to study and analyze conversations for insights. They also mentioned the barriers to entry in different communities and the value of shared experiences and values. Overall, the meeting has focused on exploring the dynamics of collaboration and the potential impact of these conversations on personal growth and understanding.
Which is different than my version. I just posted on the chat. I guess everybody have a different version from my perspective.
That's exactly my point. It's humans are different. Computers are trying to assimilate.
I was shocked to hear what Barry was saying. Like, what? This is not what my version say.
So the version that I got on AI Companion differs from the version you got?
Yeah, no kidding.
Each one of us gets a different summary.
That's curious.
Yeah.
Hey, that's very human.
If I ask it again, will it generate the same one or another random?
No, it'll be different.
Try it again.
Let me go back to AI Companion. Catch me up. See if it's different.
Yeah, I have a different version now. This is my new version.
Looks the same. Let's just see.
No, it's different. Go look at last sentence.
Well, it's not word for word, but
Okay, my new version.
I mean, it's not exactly word for word, but it's almost the same. I don't know. I can't even find where it differs.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah, it's no functionally it's just a paraphrase of what it said before, almost verbatim.
We can use all the result and compare them right using ChatGPT and see and tabulate the differences on the table.
It's the Rashomon effect that you have one story and 4 different versions of it. Although Rashomon, the movie, they're very different versions. They seem like completely unrelated narratives of.
Yep, that's the parable of the elephant, the philosophers and the elephant. We're each looking at a different part of it, and we each think it's something different. And that came up in the discussion I attended last night. Liza Loop uses that metaphor in terms of online learning. So you could go back and look at all the links I posted sometime. But last night's was a call about the past and future of computer-assisted education. And it's a part of a series that the Vintage Computer Federation's been hosting. So they bring the pioneers of early education online together, and we're exploring like what did we have, and what are the best parts of it that we could bring forward. So Liza Loop has a new project. She's the visionary for it, and so
the person's name, Liza Loop.
My mind today, because that discussion excited me, and I have my own ideas about it. And is there potential synergy? So, so I'm talking human intelligence getting together and finding something that may be useful to counteract what we've lost. So that's where I am.
Can I ask, Eric, what do you think, in your opinion, that we've lost? That's
the educational systems today, they're very rigid. They're oriented towards testing. And I think a lot of the human part of it is lost. And especially with the COVID lockdowns, kids are really way behind. And so I'm actually teaching kids music now, and this is a new area for me, and being innovative with videos that I make and trying to combine subjects together, like history and geography with the music, giving a little bit of background, trying to find things that, because my mind can synthesize a whole 50 years of experience and pick pieces that I can juxtapose and make sense in my way that I think a child can follow. But yeah,
I'm curious. Are you teaching the child to weave and juxtapose and contrast and compare the way you do, or in the way they want to, or how are you teaching them?
Okay, I'm just trying to structure a 30-minute lesson that will keep them interested, and it'll then bring up something, hey, that looks interesting, just to get them thinking outside the box a little bit. So the first lesson, it was Hanukkah music, and I did some karaoke videos so they could sing along. And yeah, now then next week is Israel, and then in December it'll be Flori Jagoda, who wrote the Ocho Candelicas, which is related to Ladino, and she grew up in Sarajevo. So older kids can do more research if the teachers prompt them a little. So that, I mean, what I've been given throughout my life is a love of learning since I was a kid, and love of research. So what can I instill of that? And growing up at the time I did, when computers were new, and I started with Apple IIe's, and now going back to those older computers and seeing what we had, like the logo, like where's the good stuff that we can take forward? And that's why I'm also interested in the things that Barry and Sam mentioned, like the multi-user dungeons and the Usenet that we had. And yeah, so the whole topic is a big elephant, and where's my piece of it? So yeah, but I've initiated contact with Liza Loop because I was starting in the chat last night, just my thoughts as they were talking. And then I just went to her contact form this morning. But I listed in the chat here all the barriers that I have internally to moving in a different direction in my life. So, yeah.
What would be the
Thank
top?
you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is very impressive. Thank you so much for sharing this. I'm more interested to like, what's your top thing on the list that we think that we could help from here?
Well, tools that can increase the human connection between teachers and students. So even if with distance learning, if there is more feedback between in both directions, because students may have ideas of how a lesson can be done better, that should be captured and incorporated. So it should be evolving better ways, better, like maybe my video is a certain way, but if you restructure the video a little differently, it might appeal to a different audience or a different culture.
Thank you. I have two suggestions for you. One would be, I call that, one is asynchronized communication, one is synchronized communication. So make sure you have a platform for asynchronized communication so that the conversation can go far away, right? I mean, long and continuously, that's what I'm saying. So
yes.
A platform for that. So that's that. The second one is getting feedback. The feedback is most important. How do you know the teacher teaching the right way so that the student gets it? My daughter came to tell me that her math professor have 3 PhD. The question I asked her was, do you understand what she's saying to you?
Yeah, good.
So the question is, how do you collect feedback? It's really, there's the science in behind it. Once you get the design, a good structure so that you collect that, it's sort of like, I know you like me, right? Because once you know you like me. So if I ask that kind of question, I'm menu-driven you to like me, so that I'm giving you pressure to say you like me instead of like, what do you think about me so far? That would be a very much open question. So feedback structure, feedback system, feedback, very anonymous votings, like the teachers have a student anonymous voting and all that counts. Honest feedback, make it friendly, make it honest, make it open, make it clear, make it your only intention is that how could I improve it so that you can get it faster, sooner, deeper, and perhaps the student can get enlightened with your lectures. That would be so wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, so there is a need for individualized attention per student. Yep. And there have been experiments on that. It's possible if teachers buy into it and do it. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing I would recommend would be, you want to look at the AI version of Khan Academy called Camino.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, cool.
So work with them, perhaps co-create something that you are using, because from my perspective, you spend 50 hours having this lecture. If Camino can make use of your information and you can leverage Camino's technology, it both wins. It's a win-win for both of you.
Yeah, one topic that was brought up is called OER, Open Educational Resources.
Right.
And these are freely available lessons that people can customize.
Yep.
Yeah, so growing that commons is a goal as well.
So the open is a structure. I'm talking about the topic itself. If it's a topic can be shared the Camino, Khan Academy may not have this, the thing that you're teaching, that they could increase one more class in their curriculum.
Yeah, so what Liza is thinking about is really tailoring a learning plan with the appropriate resources for that student. Right. And that also has to consider how the student learns best. Like I'm more auditory than textual. Right.
Yeah. And also it can benefit the whole world instead of benefiting only a few privileged person that get to know you or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be rolled out over time.
Over time, over the world.
Well, the metaphor I use is a mountain. Like you're climbing mountains of learning, and there are different mountains you could climb. And then somebody may be on a level just above you, and they could send you down a rope and pull you up to their level.
That's right. Yeah. And as my thing, there may be escalator and elevator that you can take to the mountain as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's
people that incapable of moving,
Okay, so there are different paths to get from A to B, and I think all of those should be available and evaluated and used for individual education. Yeah, because like in school, I was often ahead of the class, and I'd be on the next 2 chapters ahead or so, and it was frustrating for me waiting for the class to catch up when I could have been doing my own personal project or more research and things like that.
Yeah, you're in the wrong class. You need to go to AP version.
Yeah, I had AP as well. But see, the problem is I rushed through my education. Like I skipped a grade, and I had the AP classes. So college, I didn't have to take certain things, which I wish I had spent more time on when I was in college. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Which grade?
I skipped 8th.
I tell people I do not have a 5th grade education.
Cool.
I had a similar situation, but the way I managed to make the time in class worthwhile, even though I already knew the material from my brother, having been in that same class a year before, is my classmates were struggling. And my classmates who were struggling would come to me after class and say, "Did you understand that? Can you explain it to me?" And so my alternate education in grammar school was learning how to explain things to my peers, my classmates, such that they could understand it when the teacher's presentation didn't work. And that's really what I learned in grammar school, is how to explain things to my peers so they could understand it.
That's the best way to learn something really well, because you digest it through your system, so you can actually apply it right away. It has input and has output right away, instantaneously. That's what I found the best way to learn something is I make my student learn from me and make them teach the class. That's the best way, most efficient way.
But I could remember where the difficult passages, the stepping stones that were difficult, which the teacher often glossed over. Yeah. So I would explain it to my peers. I would dwell on the hard steps, the steps where you get stuck. And I'd get them over those hard steps. And then they could take each step in sequence. Right. And after I knew something for more than 2 or 3 years, I forgot which step was the hard step. I couldn't do that anymore. I had to have only learned it within the last 1 or 2 years.
Eric.
Yeah, so this came up recently, just like before I taught the class, there were other teachers sitting around, and they were talking about students and they're into technology, but they think that they could work alone in computer programming and they have the technical knowledge, but they don't have the work experience with a team doing a project. So, and I was mentioning that is essential these days for students to learn how to interact with each other, because programming requires team feedback, code reviews, and it's not like the old days when you could just have one person doing everything. Yeah.
That's right. You're making us hungry, Sam.
What's the name of what you're eating?
No.
Sweet rice.
In Taiwan,
chicken.
it's called batsang.
It was wrapped in grape leaves?
I think it's bamboo leaf.
Bamboo leaves.
Yeah. And it's basically sticky rice with peanuts and pork and egg and
Chestnut.
and pork and beef and mushrooms. And
not the egg, just egg yolk.
Egg yolk. You're correct. That's
right. No egg white.
That's right.
And this is a very famous, what's called that, the fifth lunar month of the fifth day, collaborate a person that jumped into the river because he got frustrated with the ruler but not listening to his advice.
I didn't know the mythology behind it. All I know is Taiwanese delicacy. Excuse me.
It's bamboo leaves in.
So what happened is that when he jumped into the river, the villager or the people around the river doesn't want the fish to eat him, so they throw in this thing into the river so that the fish will eat this instead of his body.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's prepared in a pretty interesting way because the bamboo leaf is tightly wrapped and tied around this tetrahedral shape.
Yeah.
And then it's boiled. And because it's tied so tightly, the water actually doesn't get into the rice. It just provides the heat.
Yeah.
Through the bamboo leaves.
Yeah. If you wrap it not too tight, then the water gets inside, it gets soggy. It's yucky.
Right. Buy it already wrapped and uncooked, or did you prepare it from scratch in the kitchen?
No, I see. It's rare that people actually make this. It's a Taiwanese tradition, but I used to go to Hawaii. There used to be a couple of stores that would make this. You could order it, and you could buy it by batches of 15.
Because so you can buy it uncooked, already prepared, and you cook it.
It is cooked because they would prepare it, and then I would just reheat it.
Oh, I see.
After I buy it, you can actually freeze these. These are actually freezable, and they stay for quite a while.
Okay.
But the way you reheat it is to recook it in boiling water. So you have to, boil water, toss it in there for about 10, 12 minutes or so. And then it's just like it, was freshly made.
You have to buy it in a specialty Taiwanese food market if one exists where you are.
If one exists, yes. And there's a whole...
Or you order it by internet special delivery or something.
Yeah, and because my mom's been there now 20 years, she knows various individuals who will make this now that the stores are not making it.
Okay. So you flew this back from Hawaii.
I brought back, I think, a dozen or 15, something like that, yeah.
And did you bring them back freeze-dried or frozen or dried or what?
We froze them overnight, and then I brought them on the plane frozen.
And they stayed frozen during the flight. Okay.
Yeah. I tossed them in the freezer last night. Yeah. Anyway, I've taught Gail really likes this stuff, so she now knows exactly how to prepare it, and was nice enough to bring it to me during the session. So I thought I'd make you guys all envious.
I'll say I would be surprised if scratch. That seemed pretty daunting to have been made from scratch.
Yeah, it's a big deal to make one of these, a batch of these.
Yeah. Usually after you make this, you have a painful hand because you have to tie the bamboo leaf so tight that you pull it with your hand.
So there's like folding the bamboo leaves so that it can be tied watertight.
Yeah. It has to be made by hand, I presume. You can't.
Yeah. No robot yet.
Yeah.
Maybe someday I'll have a robot to make them. Yeah.
Anyway, this whole business about learning and teaching and having this lesson plan tailored to the individual is one of my favorite topics. I call it, mentor, mentor. It's a mentor who tours you through knowledge based on what you know, your ability to understand, your interests, your background. That to me is way more interesting than the knowledge itself.
What I find is that there's a very small demographic who will warm up to that kind of education. A lot of people, either it doesn't work at all, or they are downright antagonistic towards that type of mentoring. And I've met both kinds, those that basically they shrug it off, and those who actively cause it not to work. They actively reject it.
What I found this for when I engage something like this will be, I want to calibrate where level are they in, are you up or way down, because I want to give them what they need. I need to meet them where they are instead of over,
right,
mismatch level.
There's a notorious 7-hour YouTube video where I tried it on somebody who was actively rejecting this mentoring approach. And it was after the fact, I realized what a friggin' waste of time, but I didn't know it until I tried it and failed.
But Barry, it's curious to me because a lot of this, I see you gave an example of the answer to my question. My question was to have been, if knowledge teaching was tailored to me, why would I reject it?
Yeah, and the question is, how would you know?
Is it truly tailored to me? Does the teacher, does the mentor really know me well enough to present it to me in a way that I can find palatable or even enjoyable?
Yeah, and the answer in that case was no.
That's a big if. That's a big if.
Yeah.
You know what? The most important thing from my perspective is that, about game theory, if I teach you something that you know already 70%, you will just need to learn 30% more, then you can get it a lot easier. If I try to teach you something that you only learn 10%, you need to learn 90% to make it, you're not going to make it, get bored, and you reject my teaching. So game theory, 70%, remember that.
Yeah, when I used to give guest lectures, I had a friend of mine who taught courses in philosophy and ethics and whatnot. He would invite me once or twice a year to give a guest lecture to his students. And I would use the Socratic method. I would put a list of topics up on the board and let the students pick a topic. And then I would use the Socratic method. But in a class of maybe 20 students, typically 3 of them would respond, and the rest would go along for the ride. And the 3 who responded, you could tell they loved it and they learned. And the rest of them were just sitting there, going along for the ride.
So I brought up the topic of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So if people are economically insecure or physically have health problems, the receptivity to learning, it's got to be related to the security that people feel, and if they're not loved or whatever. So you could just create a model, but this is a simplification of what's going on around the world. And where do you focus any improvement? Like right now with Israel and Gaza, I don't think anyone's going to listen. But maybe in Africa, there's opportunities. And how do we make these ideas surface enough? Like maybe there are some great ideas coming out of Africa that nobody knows about. I don't know. I'm just.
Words are very depressing. And I mean, I can say that they're depressing. I can even feel the depression. I haven't a clue how to resolve that issue. I just sit there and go, this is depressing as hell. Our species just can't seem to figure it out. Sorry. And not only that, but in the geographical territory where the beginnings of trying to figure it out are recorded in the literature. And they tried the best they could for 3,500 years, and here we are, and they still haven't succeeded. And it's just, that's what's depressing about it. Yes, Sam.
So question is, if it's too difficult for us, any of us, to solve the problem, could we ask the meta question, which is, who would we have to be? What behaviors would we have to exhibit and execute in order that we make solution possible, in order that we make collaboration possible? What do we see in that communication or negotiations that hinders collaboration, and how might we suggest that it be done differently?
That's the irony, because here we are on the internet. The internet is populated by non-living entities of technology, computers and transmission lines and modems, and the non-living components of the internet have demonstrated how to work in harmony without fighting.
They were designed.
They were designed by people who knew, people who might have written the Old Testament, except they instead wrote the protocols for the internet. And they demonstrated that non-living systems can embrace and employ these non-violent methods of communication successfully. And so here come the humans since 1995 now using this whole non-living system of advanced information processing, and they don't realize that the underlying non-living systems have demonstrated the solution that the humans can't get.
A partial solution.
Well, it's protocols, it's functions, it's models. It's all protocol-based, model-based, function-based.
Sure, but it's to get packets from here to there. Now, human interaction is much more complicated than getting packets from here to there.
Well, the problem, I think the problem is that our human systems are still rule-based. They're kindergarten rule-based. And the developers of the internet said, we're not going to make it rule-based because it won't work. We're going to make it protocol-based and upwards from protocols. And humans, if you ask a human, what's a protocol? Maybe 5% can give you a good answer, and the rest of them will go, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so let me ask this. Without quibbling over the word, you're probably aware that we have a spreadsheet of about 90 different quote-unquote protocols that some of us subscribe to and some of us choose not to. We could actually try and extend that. In other words, what are the protocols missing from that spreadsheet? And we find it curious why some people decide to either align with that or choose not to align with that. But we have asked this question over the last 6 or 7 years.
You know,
okay. If you don't recall, I'll bring the link to that.
It's not so much that something's missing, is that something's present that needs to be upgraded, and we can't get out of the thing that's not upgraded yet.
The last time I talked about protocol and rule is like, the way I remember is that rule applied to the whole population. And protocol applied to one person, one specific group or one specific category. You can't really apply it across the board.
Yeah, well, protocol supports the negotiation process, and a rule doesn't allow a negotiation.
You cannot negotiate with the whole group that everybody have different agendas.
You've got an authority figure who says either the rules obeyed or not. If it's not obeyed, there's going to be a consequence.
Yeah, that's why you apply to the group.
Yeah, and the enlightened ones say, let's evolve out of that paradigm. That's not a very good paradigm. But if you're lucky, 5% of the population will evolve to a negotiable protocol or function-based or model-based paradigm. And those of us who are trained in those concepts, we see, okay, the one place where I can employ those concepts is if I design non-living systems, high-tech systems. If I try to design a governmental system, I forget it. I'm never going to succeed.
Let's string it down to Eric's classroom. When you have 100 students in the class, you cannot have personalized teaching.
Exactly, and that's why nobody learns anything. Everybody who's learned anything from me, it's really pretty much been one-on-one. I don't know that I've ever stood in front of a class and gave a presentation where the class got it. I've stood in front of a class and done dialogue, and 3 people got it. And the other ones just sat there.
That's why you do so well in the museum, that you can watch one person playing with the puzzle.
Exactly. That's why I went to the museum and not the classroom, because people would sit down at the puzzle counter, voluntarily turning up. They would work on a puzzle, and I could observe them work on the puzzle, and I could ask them a question that would focus their attention on what they were not observing, what they were not figuring out. And I could lead them to discover the solution without me telling them. And then they would get a dopamine high, they get a thrill. And so the whole thing was based on, how can I get this person to have a felt success, an emotionally thrilling success on a challenge that they picked up, that they chose. But I could only have about 6 people in front of me at a time.
So that's what you call protocol. You cannot apply rule in your group because rule doesn't work.
But what would happen is one person sitting over there would solve a puzzle and get excited, and the other ones would say, oh, now I see the idea that if I solve my puzzle, I get to get excited.
One thing that you said, Barry, that's really important is a challenge that they chose. That's the key that keeps getting missed over.
Right. They set the agenda. You tell me what your goal is, and I will do my best to empower you to reach it without doing it for you. So that you do the work and you figure it out and you reach the goal. But I have to know that what is your goal, and then that you're conscientious about pursuing it. You're willing to do the work.
That's why what Eric put in the chat about AI indexing subjects was so important, because it allows the learner to be able to seek out what they want to learn.
Yeah. So if I ask somebody, what's your goal? Either they will disclose the goal, or they'll be evasive. If they're evasive and I have no clue what their goal is, then it's a lost cause. There's nothing I can do.
So if I may, the student get to choose the goal they want. They also get to choose the teacher they want and choose the environment they want, and they're all good.
And in particular, if the unstated goal, the undisclosed goal is I want you to fail. Barry, I want you to fail. My goal is that you should fail. There are educators for whom the students have adopted the goal. They want the system to fail. If you can intuit that the goal is they want the system they're embedded in to fail, now what the hell do you do? And I have a friend who's stuck in that paradigm. They're dealing with somebody that they have to deal with, and that person has adopted a practice of doing everything they can to make the whole system fail. In every possible modality of failure, they are engineering the failure of the system that they're embedded in, including their own failure. And you look at that and go, I don't know what to do, except narrating a story about it.
We can learn from that. So the question is, so if they fail, if the system fail, if the classroom fail, the teacher fail, you fail, what's that do for you?
Well, first of all, it tells me that the system doesn't work for them. And they're guaranteeing the system doesn't work for them.
I understand. So when the system doesn't work for them, what's that do for them? What's it accomplish for the person that's trying to make sure the system doesn't work for them? What's it accomplish for them?
That's a damn good question. The question is, what kind of thrill, what kind of satisfaction do they get out of causing the prevailing system to fail? And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, maybe they get a dopamine thrill of some sort, but exactly what's the underlying psychology that motivates them to adopt a practice of engineering the failure of the system? What do they get out of it? What's the thrill? I don't know.
They get to be the victim.
Well, but they're also the victor, because they succeeded in their goal, which is making the system fail, which means their own failure as well. And that vexes and perplexes me. I can see it's not commonplace, but the examples that turn up are attention-getting.
That exactly. That's what you, when you're a victim, that's what you get. You get attention.
And I've seen in some 70 years a few small number of exceptional, extraordinary cases where this is what the leader of the system is up against. Some participant who's out to make the system fail. I can tell you the stories, with or without the names, or make the allegory with, without the names, but the phenomenon is very real and vexing and perplexing. And if, one way to put it is, if Darwin were alive today, he'd be turning over in his grave. This is a species that's engineering its own extinction. The hell? You're muted.
Sam, you're muted.
Because survival is not cost effective. We don't have the ROI from a financial monetary standpoint.
I mean, I look at
survival, is not a factor in ROI.
Cases, and I go, this person has a death wish both for themselves and for their mishpacha, for their community, for their culture. They have a death wish for themselves and for their culture. Now what do you do?
Whenever I deal with this kind of situation, I always go deeper. So, for example, just to give an example, you got majority rule, right? So when majority rule, that means that the minority will be the victim. So if the majority win, then I get lose. So I want to make sure that majority doesn't win, so that I get what I want to get or need to get. So again, it's complex. Unless you take the time to say, okay, what's it do for you when the majority lose? Then we will make sure that we take care of it. So this is how the Indian people, everybody have to agree before we can proceed. And then of course that stops the whole progress altogether. Again, it's complex thing, but it can be solvable as long as we are willing to listen without emotion and have compassion for the reason why. There must be a good reason. They must gain something out of it. There's a fear or whatever, that their life is threatened, their survival is threatened. Just have to listen to them.
Look, there's something like 180 countries, nameable states, nameable countries, and there are a lot of failed states. I don't know, maybe a few dozen failed states around the world. Why are there so many failed states? What the hell? Why can't a nation construct a government that doesn't become a failed state? And it seems to be happening even in the United States, that you've got people in power who are trying to turn the U.S. into a failed state. Sam?
To me, that's not a meaningful question. Every state eventually dies. Every state eventually reaches a level of complexity it cannot deal with. It's not whether you define a state that works. It's whether or not you've got a practice that continually learns and changes the governance model.
Yeah, which we don't have.
We don't. We have amendments, but they take way too long and the bar is way too high. So we can't even change. And even when we have an amendment, like the 14th, we don't enforce it.
Yeah.
We have corrupt government that prevents it from being enforced.
Remind me the name of the MIT professor who, the fifth discipline, the learning organization. Peter Senge. Peter Senge, he's a voice in the wilderness. He says there is such a thing as a learning organization. And he's trying to introduce this concept. And there's a few companies who have adopted, the learning organization, but most of them don't function that way. They muddle along with an obsolescent practice that's guaranteed to fail because it's not learning.
Well, remember, your learning model also explained that the fact there's learning and there's unlearning and there's relearning and unlearning. So there's a lot of unlearning here. So you want to call failure as unlearning? Be my guess.
So you have to unlearn the practices which are no longer working. And we have a lot of practices that aren't working anymore.
So we are in the unlearning phase. Don't call that a failure.
Well, yeah, is the cost of unlearning going extinct? Because there are animals who have unsustainable practices and those species go extinct. I don't think I
the word.
use unlearning in my
I'd
model.
rather use the word refine rather than unlearn.
You have to discard misconceptions. If you have a belief and you're acting on the belief, and the belief is not an axiom, it's a falsehood, it's a misconception, and you're acting on misconceptions, the outcome is not going to be what you're expecting. If you're lucky, the outcome is simply no gain, but the outcome can also be great loss.
Yeah. For me, when I think of unlearning, it's sort of like when you overpack for your travel. The next time you travel, you say, I don't need that sweater anymore. Next time, let's stay home. So it's like unlearn, meaning that you learn something that's not useful, that you after you find out the feedback tells you that it doesn't work, you undo the learning that sort of like you forget what you need to learn or something along that same line. So that's how I think of unlearning is sort of like.
You want to call it refining the learning or discarding misconceptions.
Another concept I want to make sure we got it also is that the way before I learned the word unlearning from Barry, the way that I use a lot is that you know enough to be dangerous is what I call people. You know enough to be dangerous. And that's the know enough to be dangerous phase. You need to cross that. Until you do that, you're in trouble. Thank you. Go for it.
So I like that metaphor because notice what was the requisite before you pack differently. The requisite was you have to travel. If you never travel, you never notice that your bag is way too full.
Yep.
Right? So in other words, if you're not constantly exploring, i.e. traveling, okay, you're not able to make these observations about, oh, that's what it was useless. And that's what happens when people are calcified or just, stuck in a rut. They're not really traveling.
Yeah. I mean, I've told the story before about Alan Simpson, the retired senator from Wyoming. He spent something like 35 years in Congress. And he said he used to go on NPR. He was very candid on NPR. And he said, in Congress, I helped pass a lot of legislation. He said, but I discovered one law the way a scientist discovers a law of nature. He says, I discovered the law of unintended consequences. That we pass legislations predicting and anticipating these wonderful outcomes. And time again, what actually transpired was unintended and undesirable. And he says, I discovered the law of unintended consequences. Why are you shaking your head?
I always, dislike when people use this term unintended consequences. Unintended consequences is not a way you characterize a system or a practice. Unintended consequence is a way you actually reflect on yourself by saying, hey, I didn't take that into account.
Yep.
It's a non-sophisticated, it's a insufficiently developed model.
Yes.
It omits a very key dimension, which led, therefore, to this unintended consequence. But it's not a consequence of an action or a fault of the world. It's a symptom of the fact that you were a sloppy thinker.
Exactly. They were using incorrect, incomplete models, bogus models. Their mental models of the people in Congress were saying, if we do this, this good thing will happen. No, your prediction is wrong because your model's wrong.
And the reason I don't like that word is because unintended consequence talks about what's out there. That's the consequence. Right. It doesn't reflect the accountability inside that the model was faulty or incomplete.
And that's
a way of shirking responsibility.
That's what's absent in politics. Reliable models are absent. They're just not there. And faulty models are present. And they're acting on faulty models.
We're lucky if we get a model at all. All it is a mishmash of different, clauses.
And that's very dispiriting and very depressing. And I look at Congress and I say, this is dispiriting and depressing. They're not doing model-based reasoning.
So the question is, how do you avoid the unintended consequences? And the answer is, you release beta version, you limited number of users that can brave enough to try the beta version first before you can. That's how you discover unintended consequences.
Two answers. One, you emigrate to New Zealand, get the hell out of the United States because it ain't working. And number two, you go into technology and you use what you know to build non-living systems that work. And you stop fussing over governmental systems that haven't a prayer of working, and you get the hell out of that country. The reason I was born in Kansas, my great-grandparents got the hell out of the Pale of Settlement in Eastern Europe in the late 19th century because they knew that this system was failing. And they didn't have the power to fix it. They got the hell out of Eastern Europe. And so I was born in Kansas.
I would say that's a good model of systemic thinking. But today, to emigrate to New Zealand, I would propose is not a good model of systemic thinking.
Well, I was thinking about it when Trump and Bush and Trump got elected. I thought, is it time to move to New Zealand? Am I young enough to for it to make sense? And I finally decided it's not bad enough, and I'm too old. But if I were younger, I might think the way my great-grandparents thought when they were in their late teens, early 20s, get the hell out of the Pale of Settlement while the getting is good. And they did. They went to the New World when it was the New World, and they went to the Midwest where there was practically nobody living there. And they created literally the New World. Dvorak's New World Symphony, that literally was the New World for them in around 1900.
But Barry, how will you know when it gets so bad to the point where you need to get out? Like right now, you're seeing protests all over. When is it going to impact you? Like if
water will be boiling, the frog will be cooked.
Yeah,
I'm going to turn 79 in a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
And so very likely it won't become so bad that I'll pick up and emigrate, in my 80s. I don't think that's going to happen. I'll probably just, tough it out, soldier it out until I die. But I don't have to send my children away because I elected not to sire any. On the other hand, my brother has grandchildren. And what are they going to do? And the answer is, I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, and that's an individual decision, and there's models in history. But like the one I'm doing a lesson on is Flori Jagoda in Sarajevo. When the 1930s came, her father said, okay, you're going to get on a train, you're going to play your accordion and go to Split, and then we'll meet up there. Yeah.
At some point, you will tell the next generation it's a lost cause. Once you realize it's a lost cause for their generation, you'll encourage them to go find some other place to settle that's not so dysfunctional, so violent.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's hard to read the news, the information we're getting. Like, how bad is it now?
And the answer is it's subjective.
Yeah.
You say how bad is it, and how much worse is it going to get? Mm-hmm. Are we going to be having January 6th every 4 years? Are we going to have insurrections and another civil war in the United States? Is it going to get that bad? Are we going to start having these riots between the pro-Israelis and the pro-Hamas, the pro-Palestinians? Are we going to start having worldwide crises over this polarization? And the answer is, if we do, there's no place that's going to be safe. Maybe Antarctica.
Yeah, a man died at a protest.
Maybe Iceland. I don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, haven't you heard Trump say that if he gets elected, and that's a true danger to the country,
quite possible,
just install martial law. He's going to go after his
really goes off the deep end. I mean, at that point, I could conceivably consider, well, maybe moving to Canada. I don't know. I mean, maybe not New Zealand, but or maybe Costa Rica. Easier to move to Costa Rica than New Zealand, but I've thought about it. Costa Rica, Canada, New Zealand. Those are the first three that come to mind. Maybe Iceland. I don't know. Or tough it out, because I'm going to live another decade or decade and a half. Can I tough it out for another decade or decade and a half? Go live in Montana. Go ahead, Joshua.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this line of thinking is very narrow. It's a very small, like, if this, then that. Like, there's a broad world, and there's a broad space around all of this fear, uncertainty, and doubt that I'm hearing in the conversation.
I mean, 35 years ago, I basically exited meat space and went into cyberspace. I got out of the real world and I went into cyberspace when there was nobody in it. And I pioneered cyberspace, and it was great for about 10 or 15 years. And then
Are you saying Sam and Eric and me are nobody? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that if you go to the social networks, they're anti-social networks. Now they were very constructive, and at the beginning they were fabulous. It was wonderful, and then things sort of began to turn around in the second half of the 1990s, and now the social networks are anti-social networks.
Well, I think you need to get back into meat space. I think it's been too long in cyberspace, and I think there's more going on out in the world. Especially, you talk about going to Costa Rica, your electronics wouldn't work too well in that environment. So I wouldn't recommend that. But I'm just saying, even in America, there's some really wonderful spots, whether it be the Shenandoah Mountains or, like you mentioned, Montana. There's places in New Mexico. There's places that it would take them 20, 30 minutes just to drive to your house if you wanted to buy some property in the middle of the desert in New Mexico.
They went to
I'm
Montana,
saying,
right? So, I look at the people who, Montana, maybe, I don't know, might be better to go across the border into Canada. I don't know.
I'm just recommending look around a little bit and see what's out there. There's so much, and then you find these communities that are wonderful people that think the way you think, that we're waiting for Barry to just show up, and it could be just 2 hours to the west from where you are.
There might be places in the lower 48. I don't know. Maybe go back to.
I'm talking about Western Massachusetts. I'm saying, yeah, I'm talking about Tanglewood and then like the Berkshires. There's little teeny towns out there that are when everyone's rioting in Boston and New York and the rest of the world, it's a lot safer area. I'm not saying there is no safe in the world. I don't think.
Well, in the 21st century, probably not. It's not like, at the end of the 19th century, there was the New World. It was basically uninhabited. I mean,
I'm just saying, my experience in regular world with regular people is people say, do not go across the street and talk to those people. They're evil. They're awful. They'll kill you. They'll rape your children. They're the worst people ever. And then you go across the street and you talk to them and they feed you food. They talk to you. They're really nice. And they say, okay, I'm glad you found us. We're the good people. Do not go across the street because those people will rape your children and they're evil.
Well, take your own data. I tend to discount hearsay reports. But you can't always take a measurement. Sometimes you got to rely on other people's reports and take them at face value or discount them. And
experience it for yourself. Yeah, if you come back and you've been raped and hurt and abused, I would not go back across the street to those people. But if they're nice to you, don't take someone's word that they're horrible people.
I mean, I live in a condo and 2 or 3 of my neighbors are nice and the rest of them aren't.
The rest, have you met the rest of them?
The rest of them are, well, not the rest of them. The ones in power are crooks. And that was
right. But even if they're crooks, they can be nice to you. They can rape and murder other people, but not you.
Well, the rape was economic rape, not bodily rape.
I'm just using that to trigger in a response, that word, because it's like Nazis and Hitler, and it's one of those trigger words. But I'm just saying, people will tell you the world is an awful place, but if you travel around, I think from my own experience, there are probably, and I'm going to generously give 15%, maybe at the most 20, but in my experience, it's more like 3 or 4% horrible, evil, terrible people. It's probably 0.0005% actually.
In power, they're more likely to be horrible people than if they're not in power.
And they're usually horrible to their own family, but not to outsiders. Have you ever noticed that? They're horrible to their wife, they're horrible to their kids, but you come in and they're like, hey, how's it going? You want a drink? Come relax.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and the thing is, I've discovered that I'm a good judge of good character, but a bad judge of bad character. It takes me a while to figure out that somebody is a villainous character. And by that time, I've sort of taken a few lumps from them. Like Jimmy Wales. Found out who he was. And his partner, not his partner, his co-founder left. The guy who co-founded Wikipedia, he was the first guy to bail out of there after like a year and a half. He got the hell out of Dodge. And now I know why.
Like Frankenstein coming to life. And
but the real monster was not the monster. The real monster was Dr. Frankenstein. He was the monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was just watching My Little Pony last night, and I'm saying that for the comedic value. But the monster in the story that was terrorizing the ponies had a little thorn in its foot, and that's why it was so evil.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just take the thorn out of the monster's foot, and it becomes your best friend.
You can diagnose the thorn and remove it. Recognizing and diagnosing the thorn, like these other cases where somebody is trying to, like the Dickens, to make the system fail. I don't know what the thorn is in their foot. There is one. I just don't know what it is. And I don't know if it can be removed. It may be a childhood trauma for all I know.
I'm just, my only point is that the evil and the horrible stuff of the world is sometimes just a boy who doesn't have a friend, who grew up to be a man and hasn't resolved their things that happened when they were a boy, and they're acting out on the rest of the world, and they're so scary and terrible that no one wants to come and tell them, hey, you know what? It's going to be okay. You can stop terrorizing people, and you can live in a way where we can be friends. And I'm not saying that's a battle that everyone needs to fight, but if you are willing to take on that challenge with that monster, and if you can be the hero of the story and get the monster to stop terrorizing other people, you're helping a lot of people by doing that. And if you can't, and he ends up hurting you, that's a choice you have to make. Or she ends up hurting you. I don't want to gender the monster.
There are younger generations of leadership who had experiences where they were brought together with other people who they've been in conflict with for years. And by having those structured experiences, they get to know them. And but the problem is the older generations have the power. So how do you instill new leadership with better ideas?
Wait for the older ones to die off. To wait
you have to ask yourself, does their power outweigh your power, and what is your power? And if your power is willing to die for your convictions and your beliefs, and you step up in front of that power, you'll find out either you'll die and they have more power, or you will win. And that's courage, and that's not for everybody.
That power is to therapy itself by writing song parodies and comic operas.
Yeah, and to answer, I think Sam Hahn put in the post, am I willing to do that with DJT? I'm assuming he's meaning Donald J. Trump. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I've certainly taken my digs at DJT, not that anybody pays attention to them, but I diagnosed him as the dark tetrad, which was not a complicated.
I can't believe how, I'm sorry, I got to rant for a second. I can't believe how much he's come up in our conversations. And I said this before he was even elected, just stop talking about him and you'll stop giving him power. So the more you turn him into the boogeyman, the more he thinks he's got power. And then you're self-feeding that feedback loop of giving him the power. If everyone just ignored him, he'd go away.
I used to write, the problem with Donald Trump isn't Donald Trump. The problem with Donald Trump is that he has a constituency.
And the problem with Sam saying that the media gives him power, guess what? The media has lost 70 to 80% of their power. And I think they'll get down to 90% of their power lost, and then they will go away. So because the media didn't ignore him, they've lost their power.
The media is seeking profits. Therefore, by putting him in front of people, his constituents go rah, 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 okay? Because he's given them permission to be racist, misogynistic, hateful, etc. And it's a phenomenon that you cannot ignore. You cannot ignore that in society.
Sure, you can. You absolutely can. And you can create a new media. And that's what a lot of people have done. And if you look at your big media, one of the largest media draws for attention was Tucker Carlson. And where is he now? Is he on the media? Is he the media?
He was definitely part of
or is he just some
media? Yes.
Yeah, but is he now still the media?
No, he's gone more or less. But Trump is still there. And if you
so that's your bias. You said he's done. He actually gets more viewership now than he did before.
Is that true?
What's the name? What's the name of his?
Where's the stat?
Look it up.
If you have the stat, you should be able to cite it.
What's the name of his outlet that he's on?
He's on X, the X platform.
He's on Twitter. Well, X, okay. That's his new base.
Platform. Yeah.
And a new person that just went on X is called Apple TV. They just posted their first post to X, and they got more viewership than anything they've ever gotten before. And there are platforms. What's interesting about the platform of X versus the platform of Fox News is Fox News in demand is not really a thing that's getting a lot of attention after it's been posted at that moment. So what the media is doing is they're riling you up for a week and then switching the subject and controlling the narrative. So if you're following the media, you're being controlled by the narrative, as opposed to being able to go back to something 8 months later. How many people watch Fox News reruns from 5 years ago? Probably almost no one. But I bet you anything, people will be watching Tucker Carlson broadcasts 6 months from now in other countries, translated into over 40 different languages.
Maybe.
So that's what I mean by, as far as the amount of viewership, it's just the beginning. When you post something on those type of platforms, they're living indefinitely, just like this conversation we're having here. There might be nobody watching now on our YouTube channel, but 5 years from now, this might be the most popular show in Czechoslovakia. We don't know. Could be very popular in Finland.
I'm not sure you could, because if you you'd have to keep his inflection. If you had voiceover translation, I don't think it would work.
They can do that now, Barry. They can do the inflection.
They can make it.
The technology allows that
in another language. Well, they can do that then, because I think his delivery is as much, maybe more important than the content.
Yep, and his maniacal laugh, which is very annoying, but for some people that is a sticking point. So I'm mentioning that one person, but there's 800 new Tucker Carlsons coming up in this ecosystem that the media is not paying attention to. The quote unquote NBC, ABC, CBS. I don't know when you say the media, Sam, I'm so curious. What do you consider legit media versus illegit media?
I find very little legit media these days, because the ones that are, paid by advertising and viewership cannot be counted on to deliver the truth.
Well,
there are very few outlets that are independent of that.
There's NPR and PBS.
Those are very few, and they arguably are also biased.
Yeah, but I mean, I listen to I have NPR on 24/7 on 3 radios in the house.
Did you ever look at the ground news? I think I showed that to you, Sam.
Not yet, no.
Check out ground news. I think that model of finding unbiased information and being able to see behind the scenes of who's posting what is really a good model, and that will, I hope, continue on newer platforms. X is just one of the newest platforms, but I think there's going to be 15 to 20 new platforms like that moving forward.
You know, in the old Soviet Union, there were two major outlets. There was Izvestia. Izvestia literally means news in Russian, and Pravda. Pravda is translated as truth, although it's a cognitive proof. And there was a saying, Pravda is not Izvestia, and Izvestia is not Pravda. The news is not the truth, and the truth is not the news.
Very well said. But as long as they're controlling the conversation, it doesn't matter whether it's true or false. It's taking up airspace and signal. But and that's what I'm ranting about at this moment. Just so you know, I'm not ranting for no reason. I'm ranting because if I hear the word Donald Trump one more time, I think I'm going to lose my mind.
It's probably also the case in the United States that the truth is not the news and the news is not the truth. Maybe not as bad as the Soviet Union, but it's probably applicable.
I think we're all looking for the boogeyman and we're trying to find him. And I think he's invisible. Like there's a famous saying, the greatest thing the devil ever did was to convince you he doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So if you look at history, the amount of slaves in the slave trade from Africa to America is minuscule compared to the amount of slaves that are in slavery in 2023 right now. And the people that are enslaving those people are the actual boogeymen or boogeywomen or whoever they are. And those people are nameless. We should be fighting those people. Those are the real boogeymen that are taking children and turning them into sex slaves and, you know, trafficking them around the world. These are the real boogeymen that are existing. And that's the byproduct of these wars, is that the children are not looked out for because their parents are killed. To me, that's the children that are working in the mines getting cobalt in the Congo that are not being looked after. The people that are allowing that to happen, those are the boogeymen. Those are the ones that should be in the media every day, in my opinion. This is just me ranting.
It's 10 o'clock. I was wondering, how do we get the summary out of this session that we have? I wonder how good is the summary doing with the AI companion turned on. And I'm trying a few clicks and I'm not getting the summary. Can you guys try to see if we can get a summary out of it?
Just click catch me up. Let's see what comes up. I'm getting 3 dots right now. No, I got a very short paragraph. Let's see if it's
not much same for me.
Looks like it's identical to the one that I got at the very beginning.
Yep, that's what I was saying.
Just superficially looking at it, I see all the same words in the same order. Yeah. It hasn't updated since the
you give up on us.
So much for that technology.
Well, maybe you can. Yeah, is it you can only use that feature once? Is that what's going on?
No, you can use it multiple times.
You
get the same answer. It decides in the first 10 minutes and then it never updates. At least that's a pair.
I'm supposed to get a summary also. I don't know how to get a summary. I'm not getting the summary.
Well, while you guys are looking that up, Barry, I climbed up to the roof. I don't know. I was trying to show you the view.
You did?
Yeah, I went up on the ladder up to the roof. It's very steep. I almost fell off. And
Casella there now?
I know where I'm putting the satellite. What's that?
Is Casella there?
Yeah, she's here. She's here, and I found a spot where I can't die. If I fall off, I will live. So
tether yourself or something, but
be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will. I'm just saying.
So far,
I should have better internet.
Get somebody else.
My hope is that I'm on cellular with 1 to 2 bars, so sometimes it's a good signal, sometimes it's not.
Right.
So I'm hoping if this works, and I'm doing this for GCC, I'm fine with the rest of my life, but I'm putting the satellite up there so that I have strong connection on the next call.
Looking forward to it. You know what? I found something, Josh, funny. everywhere I go, I get 4 bars from my Google Fi, which is T-Mobile signal, and 2 bars from the Verizon now for the last 2 months that I'm observing. I have
Yeah,
I have two cell company on my phone. I can see which one have how many bars, right? And I can see that the Verizon is losing out so many times in so many places now.
yep. I've experienced that. They're overloading their network.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's a signal. The talk about two mobile signal.
Right. It's not a function of the density of the traffic, is it?
No, it's two
No.
different things you talk
Right.
about.
Yeah.
Anyway, just thought. So you are now able to get a summary as well, Barry, as a host?
I pasted in just a minute ago.
No, that's catch me up. That's not summary. The summary is a much longer one.
Oh no, what I pasted in was
catch me up.
Topics discussed.
Right.
Which is the third option.
Oh, okay.
That's the third. Topics discussed. Except when I pasted, I left off the capital T, but okay.
That's fine.
But it's not really any different.
No, the one that I was interested is get a summary of the whole thing to see if
it didn't paste it in because it was identical to what it was 2 hours.
You can use my AI if you want. We discussed food from Taiwan. We discussed Steinway pianos. We discussed learning and how the learning system. We discussed teaching. We discussed collaboration. We discussed understanding, grokking.
Right.
What else? What else, Sam?
We didn't piss anybody off.
Nobody yelled at anybody.
We didn't. I was trying to. I did a rant. I tried to piss someone off. It didn't work.
So we did good.
And also, I measured my blood pressure after I had breakfast this morning, and it's the lowest it's ever been.
Nice.
I measured it this morning.
Excellent, Barry.
Clock 122/79. It's never been that.
Yay! You did it. Give me a 5.
and I was not gonna get into any shouting matches today, no matter what, because I was said if we got in a shouting match, I'm disconnecting. I don't want to go from 122/79 back up to what was it the last time it went up 180 or something.
You have the control now. That's good.
Well, it's just that I know enough to say I'm out of here. I'm gonna. Yeah. I have a safe room.
That's good. Good for you. Good for you.
I'm gonna let the rock. You gonna leave, Stacey?
All right. Bye, Tracy. Thank you.
I was going to say, Barry, if you ever feel your blood pressure rising, just turn off the audio. You can stay on camera. Turn on that beautiful piece of music.
Oh yeah, the Russian Easter Overture.
And then just wait till your blood pressure goes down, and then turn off the music. Come back.
Well, I had
get the speaker set up, Barry. For God's sake, you have it for 3 months now.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I have to figure out what machine to put it on that supports surround sound, digital surround sound, or whatever it has to be. Yeah. I've got to figure out what's got digital surround sound.
Set it up where it is first, and then come back the sound card. So you can actually power with your iPhone.
That's an interesting point.
You can actually buy a device. I'm not sure, but you can actually power with your iPhone because the
iPhone. Yeah, this iPhone does have a plug-in earbud, but that's not digital, is it? That's just going to be
basically it's all audio signal. So you got 2 ways to go about it. One would be you just plug directly instead of output to the your whatever the connector to audio connector. You could go to the iPhone. That's one way to do it. The other way you can do is you can buy a little Bluetooth transmitter and receiver on the phone, and you can walk around with iPhone.
The 5-channel surround sound.
Right. Yeah.
Because stereo audio doesn't have the 5-channel surround sound.
So basically, the iPhone will drive a 5-channel speaker for. I forgot how it goes. So try to ask ChatGPT and see what it says.
I think that at least one of the maybe 2 of the Intel machines probably does have a surround sound audio output. I have to get down with a flashlight and look in the back of it and see what.
Okay, Google the fact that say iPhone to amplify the adapter or something along that line. iPhone to 5. I just type in iPhone to 5-channel amplifier, something like that. If you're interested, use iPhone. To me, it's much more convenient to a computer because it's much more portable.
Thing is that the computers that what I have to hook it up to are the ones in the living room, and I almost never use those.
Right. Okay. So you can have the music going on all the time.
Well, and plus the living room is the only room that has enough floor space to put all that stuff.
Right.
I mean, here in the kitchen, it's not going to work, and upstairs in the little room upstairs is too small. So it has to go in the living room, and I got to figure out which machine in the living room supports it, and then I have to use that machine, which I almost never do.
Right. So let me text it to the chat so you have it. I just type in iPhone to 5-channel, so that has.
Yeah. I should
Lightning to RCA cable, audio adapter, stereo voice splitter to select iPhone, like that.
Lightning adapter. Well, so the Lightning is iMac. That's this machine.
Yeah, iMac, Lightning to.
This machine is an iMac, 2013 iMac, so it's got either Lightning or whatever it's called these days.
No, it's not Lightning. The Lightning, the small connector for the iPhone, the way you power the adapter.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, Lightning is kind of confusing. They have two versions of it.
The USB connector is Lightning. That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, something along that line, play with it so you can have the music going on. It will help your blood pressure as well, because when you have news going on in the background, it's very different experience than when you have nice music going on in the background.
When I played that Russian Easter Festival just on this iMac with the tinky little speakers, I was getting up and dancing to it. I couldn't.
We'll till you powered on the 5-channel speaker, then you can.
Yeah, I'll have to hook it up to the 5. I have to figure out how to hook up the 5-channel to something in the one of those things. Anyhow, I think everybody's gone. Sam is gone. It's just you and me. So it's 1 o'clock, and you got to go.
Okay, talk to you then.
So
see you next week. Talk to you. Bye.
Bye.